listening to Therapy for Your Money, a podcast about all things money and finance for therapy practice owners. If you want to feel confident and in control of your financial life, then you've come to the right spot. I'm your host, Julie Harris. I'm an accountant and the owner of Green Oak Accounting. My firm specializes in working with private practices across the U.S., and my team and I have worked with hundreds of private practice owners. I'm on a mission to share all the best practices I've learned along the way because I want you to have a profitable private practice. My new book, Profit First for Therapists, is available at most online retailers. You can get it in paperback, audiobook, or ebook as well. Go check it out. Hello, and welcome to Therapy for Your Money. As we get started with season 5, yes, 5, I can't even believe it. I have 2 really exciting episodes for you about exiting your practice. And exiting really usually means selling your practice. So in today's episode, I am talking with Nicole McCance, who is a retired psychologist who sold her practice a few years ago. And we talk about what that process looked like. And then in next week's episode, we talk about how much your practice might be worth. But if selling your practice has been on your mind, I also want to tell you about a free webinar I have available on selling your practice. It's called Unlocking Your Exit Strategy. And in the free webinar, I talk about options you have when you are leaving your practice. I talk about how to value your practice in much more detail. I also talk about what the tax implications of leaving your practice might be. So go check out that webinar at greenoakaccounting.com/exit-replay. This link will also be in the show notes, so go check out the webinar if this has been on your mind. Enjoy. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Therapy for Your Money. Today we have a repeat guest. Nicole McCance is with me. Yay. Hi, Nicole. How are you?
So happy to be back. I love being with you.
Yes, same. I loved our first conversation, and I'm excited to have this next conversation, which is a topic that is on the mind of a lot of our listeners, I'm sure, is exiting your group practice. I think if you're a human and you've had a group practice for more than 5 minutes, you've probably thought about throwing in the towel at some point. I actually like to joke, are you really a business owner if you haven't thought about just leaving it all behind at some point? So I'm excited to talk about that with you today.
Yes. And I mean, so can I tell you a little bit about the beginning? Because I didn't want to throw in the towel.
You did, yes. So you are in a situation where you did not want to throw in the towel. But so tell us a little bit about you, what you do now, and then we'll just roll
Sure.
into selling a practice.
Amazing. So I am a retired psychologist, Julie. But if you were to ask me even, oh my God, 3, 4 years ago, I would say, what? No, I will do this for the rest of my
Yeah.
life. I'm on this planet to help people without question. EMDR every day. Give me all the couples. I loved it. Right. And that's why I was able to scale to a group practice in 3 years to 55 therapists quite quickly. And picture this. So I felt, and I wonder if the group practice owners feel this too. It's like I was running a marathon and I had a really clear goal of what I
Mhm.
wanted. And then when these buyers approach me, kind of through a friend, I'll get into those details in a second. It's almost like you're running, you're focused on the goal, and someone's like kind of yelling in the sides, and you're like, "What? No, I'm sorry, I'm running this marathon." Like it, you know what I mean? Like, no, I
That's a great
definitely
analogy. Yeah, where you're just so focused, you don't even
yes.
pay
You don't even
attention
hear.
to
You're
the
like, "What? No."
sidelines. Yeah.
Yes. So I had a friend, and this is really key because people ask me, would you have sold it to the psychiatrist you did if you didn't know someone who had sold their clinic to him and his conglomerate? And I don't know if I would have. So I had a friend, another psychologist, who had sold it successfully. And 2 things I needed to see. One, I needed to see her get paid because you never know, right? Like I wanted to
Sure.
make
Yeah.
sure, is it really going to happen? And then I saw it flourish. I saw him take really good care of her people. And she told
Okay.
me 6 months later that that was life changing. And then that's when I slowed down on the marathon. I'm like, wait, okay, wait. Tell me more.
Okay. So I'm visualizing this, right? You're running and now this person's running alongside you and maybe you're slowing down to have a conversation, but you're still going.
Exactly.
Okay. I
Exactly.
love that. I love that visual. So really you were not looking for a buyer when
No.
you sold the business. So then how did you decide it was the right time for you?
Yes. So she's in Ottawa. I'm in Canada, as you know, but work about 70% of my members are American. And so she said to me, he's interested in buying your Toronto clinic, but I know you're not interested, so I'm not going to tell you more. And I said, thanks. And that was it for a couple of months. And then I brought it up to my husband and my tax accountant, and he said to me, "Okay, Nicole, just so you know, this doesn't happen to a lot of people in their life. And I'll tell you something because I had 2 accountants." So he said, "You should maybe go for this." Because this was around just after COVID, and he said a lot
Mhm.
of things stopped. Like, they thought it was happening, and then it didn't happen, like, they didn't never sold. But my
Mhm.
my in-house accountant actually told me, "Nicole, you never sell on an upward like, when the stock's going up, don't sell then. You sell when you're stagnant, or you sell when you're going down. You don't sell when you're going up. Hold on to it, Nicole, for at least 2 years." But after consulting, I thought, "You know what? I could lose them. If I hold on to it, like this life-changing opportunity, I could just like lose them in 6 months." So that's when I started thinking like, okay, maybe if they'll take as good care or even better care of my people, I'll let it go.
Yeah, and by lose them, do you mean the buyer will no longer be interested? Is that what you were
Yes, that's what
thinking?
I
Okay.
mean.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
never
and that
know, right? An offer can go
absolutely.
cold in an instant.
Absolutely. Yeah, and even when someone is really interested, that's not ever a guarantee that the deal will go through. I mean, that's something that on the accounting side we see all the time. I was
Yeah.
asking my team just last week, how many of the deals that we see do you think actually go through? And they were guessing under 10% of the deals that we look at where the practice owner is actually interested in selling or entertaining the offer, less than 10% end up going through
Oh,
all the way to sale. Something happens, or the number's not enough, or multiple times in the last 2 years, we've seen the buyer back out at the very last minute.
there you go. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
that
Yeah.
happens somewhat regularly. Interest rates or something has changed. There's a purchase freeze and they decide they're not buying practices anymore. There's a lot of things that
Yes.
can happen, a lot of different
Yes.
things. Okay. I took a detour. So for you, it was the right time to sell because you realize this was an opportunity that may not come up again. How did you
Yeah.
know it was going to be the right buyer for you?
I love that he was a psychiatrist.
Okay.
I love that he had multiple clinics and my really good friend had a really good experience. I really liked him. Of course, there was multiple Zoom calls. I
Hmm.
liked that he told me that over above anything else, he puts the therapist first. And I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." He didn't say the clients, he said the therapist. He didn't say profit, which is good. I didn't wanna hear that at
Yeah.
all. But it was an interesting philosophy. He said, "The therapists have to be happy because if they're not, then there's no group practice," which is so true. And then there's no good
Yes.
quality care. So I just really loved his values, and I could tell he was a good person. It took 1 year and a whole lot of Zoom calls. I had a massive practice, of course, so there was do you want me to walk everybody through kinda, like, some of the steps that
I would
I had
love
to
that.
take?
Yes.
Yeah. So step 1, guys, and I've got, like, 3 things that I highly suggest you wanna do. So first, you want to systemize. I couldn't have sold if I didn't have a self-operating group practice. So I wasn't seeing clients anymore. I wasn't supervising anymore. I slowly had hired more and more people. And that's why he's like, wait, you have a revenue generating machine
Mhm.
and it doesn't need you. So that was really important. But he wanted to see the systems. It's like, prove it. You have to prove everything. They don't only open up the books, they open up everything. And thank goodness he was really impressed. He's like, holy cow, okay, you've got tracking and onboarding is systemized and your admin processes are systemized. Number one. But the biggest thing that people don't know is you have to be, and this ties into profit, profitable. You have to be profitable. They buy our clinics, at least here in Canada, based on just pure profit, not revenue. They do not care about the revenue, they care about the profit.
Nicole, I mean, I feel like we need to say that again. You have to have a profitable practice to be able to sell it. And it's
Yes.
shocking sometimes the number of like struggling practices who think, well, maybe I'll just sell. Like you might be getting an offer, but once they look at the numbers, they're not going to be interested if there is zero margin.
Yes,
It's just not
exactly.
like there is no benefit. Why would they? Why would they do that? Why
Why
would they
would
do
they?
that?
Because it's not gonna actually make them any money.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, can I just say something about that? You're gonna love this. So, I didn't do profit first, but I know one of the principles is obviously putting profit first, and I invested way too much on the things that didn't matter, and I didn't notice it until they were
Oh.
looking at the profit. Like, check out my very expensive desk. So and my chair. So I would invest in we had 24 rooms, in $200 really swanky white chairs. Guess what?
Mhm.
They bought everything. So when they purchased the clinic, they got everything in it. The chair I literally waved my hand the day that I left and walked out the door, but they didn't say, "Oh, wow, I'm gonna give you a premium because that's a very beautiful glass table." I thought they would. They didn't.
They
They're
did
just
not.
like, "Let's look
Yeah.
at the profit." So if I would have spent less and just, like, got an okay table, I actually would have made more money on the deal. Do you see that?
That's so interesting. Okay, so what are other areas where you feel like I really did not need to spend that much?
Oh my gosh. So I'm curious your thoughts though, because I'm coming from a branding brain here. I had this beautiful mural. Okay. So picture it. We did neurofeedback. You're in the waiting room and you see this, all the lobes of the brain explaining the brain waves. We had neural networks everywhere. And it was a talking piece. We had clients taking pictures. It warmed my heart every time I saw this. But it was okay. Don't judge me. Hand painted thousands of dollars. And guess what, Julie? They painted over it beige. And so those thousands of dollars would have been in my pocket, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
That's such a great point where I was thinking, okay, maybe it's not very valuable to the buyer, right? That's not something that they're that's a kind of a personal taste where maybe they're not putting a lot of value on that, but they paint it over, which is even sadder.
Oh
Like
my god.
it's
I
just
cried on the
gone.
inside. Yes.
Oh
So
gosh.
if
Yeah.
I was to do it over again, I would get things that are gonna last. Like you need a good couch that lasts, right? Because
Sure.
people are sitting on it all day long. But I wouldn't like my ego got involved a bit. Like I really wanted pretty, like really, really pretty and gorgeous and like
Mhm.
people
Mhm.
talking about it. But when it came to dollars and cents, when I was walking away, I kind of was like, oh, none of that really mattered in the end. If you're gonna sell, maybe that doesn't matter.
Yeah, so was that mostly things that you felt that way about? Like the
Yeah,
things
the
in the
things.
office, or were
Decor.
there people or positions or services that you felt weren't quite worth it because it didn't add value at the later on?
No, I nailed that. Thank the Lord.
Okay.
So number 1 is systemize, number 2 is profit, but number 3, if I could just say, "Guys, you know what
Yeah.
matters? Is team." They asked me, "Let me see your systems." Then they asked me, "Let me see your profit." Then and they went deep, right? For months and months looking everywhere. Then they asked me, "Let me see your team retention. How much do you pay every single
Mhm.
person, but how long have they been there? Let me see the contract. When was their last raise?" Like, they go in. And retention mattered because they're worried that when I walk away, which I did stay for a little bit, I think that's key, that's important,
Mhm.
that not everybody walks away with me.
Yes. Yes, and usually, well, not usually, on many deals, there is an earnout based on team retention. Is that how your deal was structured? No.
No, I
Okay.
don't think so. What's an earnout?
So where you'll get a certain dollar amount at the end of 6 months, 1 year, sometimes there's even an earnout at 1 year, at 2 years, at 3 years, if
Oh.
they want you to stay that long, but they want to incentivize you to retain the team that long.
No,
So you have a direct incentive. If you retain X percentage of the team, then you're getting this earnout, and profit stays a certain percentage. Usually they're tied to one of those 2 things.
right. I felt that if I was going to go I helped them with the marketing, I didn't
Okay.
help them, right? I didn't want strings attached because then it
Mhm.
doesn't feel so clean. Like, why sell if you're still in and then results are tied to you? The freedom piece, I think, comes with, "Here you go, you get paid based on your hard work. This runs without you." I think that's the
Yeah.
best way to sell personally.
Yeah, so you stayed on for a couple of months?
So I signed for 2 years. They
2
said, "We
years,
want
okay.
don't go anywhere." Because the truth is, I do think the brand was tied to my face, of course. So I showed up to the clinic meetings but mostly I just helped them, with the marketing and just, keep the funnel coming in and people showing up and things like that, but I wasn't
Got it.
tied to any result.
Okay, so they were paying you for the work that you did there then, but it wasn't, your payout was not
They paid me like a
specifically tied
monthly
to it.
stipend to stay,
Okay.
which was
Okay.
untied. Yes,
Got it.
exactly.
Okay. Okay. That does sound like a good way to do it. How was that process though, sitting in the chair without being the owner anymore at the meeting?
It would have been different if results were tied to me, I think,
Okay.
because I'm a control freak, and so if this is it would still feel like it was mine, kind of, because if nobody do you know what I mean? That, okay, these results are tied to me, but it was now theirs. It was kinda like a clean cut. It really did feel like I've moved out. I have a new home now. You know what I mean? Like, the visual, and I'm just gonna come and visit and, like, help them stay successful.
Okay. Oh, I love that. It's like you went away to college and you're just kind of
Yes.
popping in,
You've got
checking
it.
in. How's everything going?
I will
Um,
say though, the people, right? Like these were my
yeah.
people. Some of them were my people
Sure.
from the very, very beginning, like unpacking boxes with me and picking the colors and all the things. That's why I'm glad I didn't just like walk out the door. I think that would have been really hard. So it was like a slower, yeah.
How did they take it?
It was so I think communication is really, really key. It was gradual. So first we were like, we're gonna introduce this new company. They're gonna help us with management, and ask you some questions and all these things. And then because I think change management is like really important
Mhm.
to go from we're gonna be together forever to just kidding. So it's
Right.
kind of like introducing them and throwing the idea out there and getting them to answer questions, things like that. Um, yeah, honestly, a lot of them seemed to be really okay with it. I still got invited to weddings. We hung out at the Christmas party, like that kind of stuff. I think they just really liked that the new owners really cared. And here's the other thing. They gave pensions that I couldn't afford. I wasn't a
Wow.
conglomerate. They
Okay.
gave benefits. Like they came in with educational funds. And so that was obviously also helpful. I
Okay.
think for people, yeah.
Got it. So, because I'm just imagining, your day one employees, unpacking the boxes. They sometimes feel like they have some ownership in the business, right? It's not a direct, they don't actually own a percentage, but like they feel like they are part of building this thing. And I
Mhm.
think it's hardest on them when you are transitioning. Was that your experience?
I think so. I think, like, staying close with them and just making sure that I think the other key is that there's not a lot of change right away, because that
Okay.
could be a whole lot,
True.
right? So, because I had systems that really worked and that's why we grew so fast, they didn't come in and, like, change everything, which was great. They also met with everybody individually, I think was kinda nice. So, they're providing these incentives and, like, took the time to personally meet with everybody in person.
Yeah, which a team of 55 plus your admin team, right? That's a lot of people
Exactly.
to
They're
meet with.
amazing
That's
people.
a lot of people
Exactly.
to meet with. Okay, so that's something that as a seller you don't necessarily have so much say on with how they decide to transition, right? Are they going to come is the buyer going to come in and change everything right away? Like you
Yeah.
don't really control that, but in this case that was really positive for your
Yeah.
team.
Yeah.
So how else did you get ready to sell your practice?
The biggest thing was just like making sure that tightening all of the systems. And what I tell people is do a check that it floats. So what I mean is a lot of people are like, I don't know if I can let go. Is it going to float? Is it going to float? So if you take half a day off and just let go, and if it starts sinking, then you know where the gaps are and then you can
Mm,
fix them. So for me, for that year, I was doing a lot of, okay, what could break if I'm not there and like fix that now, replace myself with somebody, what can I delegate, things like that.
got it. So is that things like access or, who can get into this one weird marketing thing that we only do once a year? Or like, what kind of things were breaking as you were starting to step away? Or not breaking, but not floating.
Yeah, so we did have everything. I just put everything into like a manual in the Google Drive, everything from like how to exactly open the clinic. I think it was more of the marketing things. I think the hardest part was there was some flow that came in from me still. Like,
Okay.
guys, my group practice people, I know we try to shift everybody to our mini me's. I always say hire your mini me's. But in
Yeah.
the end, there's just like my name was floating around. I did tons of TV back in the day. So
Got it.
those referrals were coming in. So I was trying to, like, get them to write more blogs, like focus on the brand and not me. I think that's
Okay.
really key. Yeah.
Got it. Because even though you had not been seeing clients for a while, that was still happening.
Yes, reputation lasts
Interesting.
forever, right?
Very interesting. So as you were really considering this sale, what are some of the professionals that you worked with?
Mm, definitely a lawyer. Now, I had mentioned I had a friend colleague who had sold her clinic. Okay. She went with a
Yes.
cheaper lawyer.
Okay.
He missed details, really important ones. My lawyer did not miss those details, and he made me an extra 70 grand. Literally, there was one detail. Guys, the
That's so much
lawyer,
money.
oh my gosh, the lawyer will pay you back in dividends. Invest in an
Yes.
amazing lawyer. The other thing is an accountant. So back in the day, like, I try to save money too, right? So I did go to my financial planner, which I'll get to in a second, and I was like, "Do I need to go with a chartered accountant? Could I go with this other one?" They're called chartered accountants here. And he's like, "Nicole, go with somebody who's actually, like, done mergers and acquisitions," and I'm so glad that I went with an accountant who is an expert. Yes, he's more expensive, but let me tell you, it was a smooth ride. This is such an emotional time. Of course it is. You're leaving your baby, you're going away, this whole, like, moving out
Yeah.
feeling, that have an army around you of professionals that you trust and are the best in the best. So I had the lawyer, attorney, you call them, and then also an amazing financial planner to say, okay, what's going to be your plan here with the money, basically.
Yes. Yeah, and you need my opinion is you need all 3 of them. You
You need all
cannot
three. No.
skimp. One of the common misconceptions that we've seen on the accounting side is this the seller will think, "Oh, well, the buyer has an attorney and accountant. They're also looking out for me." And it is absolutely not true. They're
It's the
looking out for
opposite.
their client, who is the buyer, and you need
Yep.
people on your team.
Oh,
Um,
to that,
100%.
yes. Well, to that point, I think intentionally their lawyer left something out, which my lawyer caught and was like, no, 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 and added it back in. So that could happen. Of course, it's in the best interest of their client, which isn't
Of
you.
their yeah, yeah. And another piece is that I think practice owners tend to overestimate how much their practice is worth and underestimate what their financial needs are down the line.
Yes.
And sometimes the offer doesn't make sense, right? It might make sense. It might be a fair offer, but if you are no longer going to be able to practice and you have to make a complete life change, sometimes it's just not enough money for a practice owner to do that, right? If you're 38 years old and moving on, that's a lot of working years left.
Yes.
And it has to be enough money that that makes sense for you too.
And I think forecasting it, I'm sure you do with
Yes.
them where it's like, okay, this is how many years until you retire, what's your lifestyle? And they're probably used to having quite a good lifestyle. So they need to keep
Sure.
that up if their kids are in all these things. Yeah.
Yeah. And Nicole, you have then pivoted. And before we started recording, I told Nicole, she's building it her second empire now
Yeah.
and doing all the things, and she's everywhere and doing an amazing job. I now host a Q&A in Nicole's group
Yeah.
for the American practice owners, but just such a great group of people who are leveling up. And so Nicole, in her case, she just said, okay, I'm done with this part of my life. I'm going to go do this other thing. But sometimes it can
Yeah.
take a while to figure out what that other thing is going to be and make it profitable, right?
Yeah.
And make a good living doing it.
Yeah, and I vividly remember sitting by my pool being like, "Okay, so I'm not gonna practice because you mentioned that, I just wanna touch on that you do sign basically a non-compete. So non-competes are not a thing anymore officially in the States, also in Ontario, they haven't been for a while. However, and I'm curious about this, Julie, over there where you are, they are when in a sale that you can do a non-compete. Absolutely, the only time you can do it over here in Ontario is when there's a sale. So I don't know, is that the case?
So I haven't, this is very new for us. And I have been meaning to talk to my attorney friend because I suspect it's the same
Yeah.
for us. Yes, where it's not, you can't tell your clinician, hey, you can't compete against me. But in the case of a sale, I do suspect it is still legal to have that, where you can't. You can't sell and say like, "Oh, I'm gonna go down the street and open
Yeah.
up a new practice in competition to you, my buyer." That's not
Yeah, 'cause you're a big threat, right?
yes, that would
Yeah,
ethically not be right either, in my
exactly.
opinion, right? Like, that doesn't feel right. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I couldn't practice up to 4 hours away or something. Like, I could go and move
Okay, so
somewhere,
that's
but
a lot. That's a
it was
big
quite
range.
substantial.
Yes.
Yeah. But I wasn't practicing anyway, so that was perfect for me. So I vividly remember sitting by my pool and thinking, "Okay, what am I gonna do?" And it was I literally jumped in my pool at 9 a.m. I'm swimming around and because this is my new life, right? And it
Right.
honestly,
Life of luxury.
I was bored after 2 hours, and actually my neighbor who was watching me because she could see me, she messages me, she didn't know I sold. She's like, is everything okay? Why are you swimming in your pool at 9 a.m.? It's so funny." I'm like, "No, this is good news." I'm, like, floating around. But then I got out and I realized, wait, what if I take it to my peers? What if I take all the systems, the marketing plans, the exact map, and give it to my peers? And that's the day Nicole, the business coach, was born.
I love that. Okay, so speaking of that, let's dive into what you are doing now because I'll bet a lot of listeners are interested.
Yeah, so I work with psychotherapists only in North America, only those scaling into a group practice. Some are solo and always dreamed of a group practice or just want to hire, or some have big group practices and I help them level up. I help them systemize, build the container, and then fill the container. Don't do that the other way around. First systemize, then hire. You'll be less overwhelmed and then grow. And I help them get to 7 figures and sell if they want.
So, and you have a free training for us today,
I
right?
do,
All right.
yes, I do. I will put the link in or you'll put the link in the show notes if that works.
Yes, I will.
Yes, it is a free training called Level Up to a Thriving Group Practice in 6 months or less. And I have a podcast. If you guys wanna find me over there, I have the Business Savvy Therapist podcast.
Perfect. Thanks for sharing that, Nicole. And I must say, everyone that I have met through your group is hungry, is in that leveling up spot, which is just such a fun place to be. It also can be a lonely place to be when you're
Yeah,
focusing and growing. If you're surrounded in your personal life with people who are not business owners, they don't always get that. And so to be
yes.
around other people saying like, "Hey, I'm going through this thing. What should I do? What have you done?" So helpful.
That's why I
Um,
put this community yes, my poor
yeah.
husband, Dan, was so sick of talking to or hearing about my group practice ideas. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I feel
Yes.
like it's lonely. It truly is lonely at the
Yes.
top. Yeah.
Yes, where they don't quite get it. So my husband actually was a business owner until last year. It's been just a little bit over a year since he sold his own business. So we've always kind of chatted business, but now he's not a business owner anymore, and that has shifted things a little bit. Where
Right.
he's the one taking a step back, still working for the company, but it's
Oh,
just an
that's funny.
interesting transition. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Well, Nicole, thank you so much for coming on today. It was such a pleasure chatting with you again. As we wrap up, can you just tell us one more time where people can find you online?
Yes, you can find me on Instagram, Nicole.McCance Method, or I would look for my podcast, The Business Savvy Therapist.
Perfect. And we'll link to all of those in the show notes. Thanks, Nicole.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I do want to remind you about that free webinar I have available for you. You can go to greenoakaccounting.com/exit-replay to watch the webinar on the options available to you if you are thinking about selling your practice. If you're looking for accounting help, head over to therapyforyourmoney.com/accounting to find information about my accounting firm and all of our specialized services just for private practice owners. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd love for you to give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. Just head over to iTunes, click on ratings and reviews, and give us a quick shout out. We really appreciate it.
The information contained in this podcast represents the host and guest's general opinions and should not be construed as personalized accounting and tax advice. Listeners should consider all facts and circumstances before applying this information and seek appropriate advice from an accountant, financial planner, lawyer, or other professional. Any info provided does not constitute accounting, tax, or legal advice.